So as always, there's a plethora of features that the UI team has been working on. One of those features has been the MobiGlas, and we've been kind of overhauling that over the course of the past few months. We had done some preliminary concept work last year, working closely with our systems design team to design something that would assume something more akin to what you would find in a typical desktop OS. However, what we really needed was a few key pieces of tech that would really make it worthwhile without us having to write a ton of bespoke code and functionality. One of those was what we call the render to texture tech, and that's something that the graphics team has been working on and providing us. So we are essentially now integrating this tech with all of our UI across the board, including the MobiGlas. So you'll find this eventually in ship displays, shopping terminals, kiosks, and so forth. So the key effect that this provides us is that it enables us to render a 3D scene, whether it's a video comm call feed or an image representation of an item in game. But we're able to render that on either a 2D screen or actually within a 3D hollow volume. So in both cases, it's actually the same exact display tech being used. We don't have to write bespoke code to display a UI or a 3D representation in a 3D volume versus a 2D one. So this allows us to have things like 3D holograms of ships and sort of mini-maps and the star map and so forth rendered onto screens in game, and it looks much more proper than it would otherwise. You know, in our game, we have a lot of different environmental archetypes that we need to account for. When you're traveling across the universe, you'll come across environments that are more technologically dated and ones that are more technologically progressed. So this extends to a lot of different things, including, you know, their style of architecture, their style of clothing, the devices that they use, the goods, and so forth. And for the UI in particular, this affects us in that we need to design our UI based on that archetype. So in a more lower tech environment, we can just display the UI on flat 2D panel displays. So for a more technologically advanced setting, that's where we sort of bring in our 3D holographic style of UI. And so the MobiGlas in particular is manufactured by this corporation called Microtech, and they actually manufacture all of the handheld devices in the universe. So naturally, they're very high tech. So you would find in the MobiGlas it's a holographic projection. So the MobiGlas assumes a very crucial role in the universe in that it serves as the primary access point to all of the different game mechanics and transactions, player communication, and so forth. So it's sort of akin to what we have in smartphones in today's world. That's basically what MobiGlas is in Star Citizen. And that's kind of how we designed it to be in the persistent universe. You know, you have a home screen which has various widgets which provide you sort of at-a-glance information, but we have all of these dedicated apps which serve very specific purposes in the game world. Things like managing mission contracts, customizing your loadout, viewing maps, and so forth and so on. It's designed to be this sort of very direct link to your player character as well as the surrounding environment. So if you wanted to know more information about yourself or the kind of outside environment, that's what you would infer from the home screen widgets. So if you wanted to check what is my current oxygen level, or what's the current atmospheric composition outside, or the atmospheric pressure, is it safe to take off my helmet? Is it safe to walk around outside without a suit? And if not, do I have enough oxygen to make it to the next destination or where I'm trying to get to? It's like, what is the state of the health of my character? Am I hurt in any way? Or what is the state of my mission objectives that I currently have tracked? How much money do I have? And all of these questions can be answered through the use of the MobiGlas.
Because we're doing all this new work on the MobiGlas and the screens and stuff, we really wanted to also upgrade the model of it. The MobiGlas is essentially a watch, and it's a completely different element than any of the screens or any of the buttons that you actually push on it. So in that way, we had a little bit of free reign, but we also wanted to make it, we knew that we wanted to make it smaller and more streamlined so that it could fit with everything, and we didn't have to adjust too many of our other assets. But we also didn't want to rein in and constrict ourselves for later too, so that's why it got much smaller. The MobiGlas model you've seen for a long time is getting a little old, and we wanted to update it with not one version, but actually 2 versions. Because, as you've seen in some of the previous character videos before, we've been updating our modular system for all our clothes and our armor. This meant that the MobiGlas is going to have to change as well. Because you have all these different versions of jackets and shirts and things that are going to be able to take on and off and show, the undershirt or maybe the overshirt or a jacket or a suit, it really needed to fit and be kind of an all-in-one solution. What we did is we made the new MobiGlas much thinner and much smaller to accommodate that. We didn't want to go through running through any of these weird tech restrictions where maybe you have a jacket that covers the MobiGlas, and to see that, you would have to pull the sleeve back, and that just gets really complicated. So we want to make sure that the players can see the MobiGlas at any time. It wasn't that complicated to do. It was mostly a little bit of a redesign. Jeremiah Lee, one of our concept artists here, did a 3D concept so we could really easily and quickly see it. The civilian MobiGlas is the one that you'll be wearing in clothes. And then the military version is going to be the one that you wear in your undersuits and your armor. Something that's a little bit more rugged, and it's going to be, for combat use. So one of the biggest challenges on doing the new MobiGlas was the modular system for all the clothing and the armor. So because the modular system is the main reason that we had to redo the MobiGlas, we had to go through all the different options of the different types of clothes you're going to be wearing, long sleeves and jackets and undersuits. And that was where we really figured out that something that was thinner was going to be better than something that was thick and bulky, but also where we realized that some of our current assets might have to be adjusted. If we made it really thin and it fit with some assets, that was great, but other ones might have to be pulled back so you could see it all the time. We really want to make sure that it's available for access because it's cool to see, but also it adds a little bit of a level of detail where everybody's wearing one and everybody has them up, and everybody is eventually going to be able to customize them to show how much you've spent on your MobiGlas or how expensive it is or what brand you got.
We want to make each application very robust for the specific functionality that it's meant to serve in game. But on top of that, we want to introduce the ability for players to personalize his or her MobiGlas such that it's more contextually relevant to his or her common tasks that another player might not actually care so much about. So for instance, on the home screen, you have all of these different widgets that you would eventually be able to customize. As we start adding more and more functionality in game, then we would kind of be able to fit on the home screen. So that's the kind of idea behind that. So fundamentally, the MobiGlas is a diegetically projected UI, and what this means is that the UI is meant to be seen by not just you as the player, but also is meant to be visible by your in-game character as well. So basically, your player character is aware of the UI just as you as the player are aware of it through your screen. And we do this for a couple of reasons. One is because the fact that we retain the visual connection between your player character and the UI makes it much more immersive to use. Because we will be a VR-capable game, we're kind of forced to project the UI in 3D space, because otherwise it just wouldn't work. In a traditional flat 2D menu, you just wouldn't be able to read it. So you need to project it at some sort of distance away for it to actually be usable. So we sort of do that from the get-go, and that's sort of always been our driving paradigm in UI design. In general, for all of the advantages that a diegetically projected UI has, we as UI designers sort of lose a bit of control and flexibility in terms of, being able to adjust the UI. The UI in general is sort of at the mercy of the display geometries and animations and so forth. So if we need to change something, it's not necessarily as easy as just adjusting something on our end and calling it resolved. We actually need to work really closely with the other departments to ensure that the UI is usable. So working with animation, working with the art teams, working with gameplay engineers to make sure that the user experience isn't hampered negatively.
So in UI design, you can only subvert player expectations so much before they find your UI clunky, frustrating, or unusable, something we absolutely don't want in our game. A good rule of thumb we use is that you should only be focusing on and changing one unique angle of your UI to ensure that the core components of the rest of the system remain understandable and within the expectations of the player. So what I mean is that the main thing you'll see with the MobiGlas that differs from traditional UI systems is that we made it as diegetic as possible, making sure it was immersive and stayed grounded in the game world. So things like attaching it to your wrist movement, tilting it back a little bit, and adding visual effects to make it look like a real object in the world, and not just something sitting on top of the game world. The visual design style and user experience of the interface itself, while interesting, is fairly straightforward. Simple line art and shape language, basic color schemes, and compact information light layouts. Again, this is because we felt if we created an overly unique visual style coupled with the diegeticness already, it would be kind of like a sensory overload and would actually inhibit usage and usability. And as with all UI, especially in gaming, that's the goal we're always trying to strive for. How can I make something visually interesting and unique, fun to use, but also make it immediately understandable to a new user? Putting the UI in the game world comes with a unique set of challenges. It's not just the UI sitting in a silo and it's on top of the game and it's an afterthought. It's something that needs to be integrated with animation, with audio, with the VFX team. So it's super rewarding to work with all those different teams and be able to build a system together instead of just working with the UI team alone.
What we do in terms of audio is obviously not trying to break the immersion that the different artists have put on their work, but instead we try to enhance that player experience by addressing them sonically. So one of the first things we did was basically sitting down with Zane, and we went through different concepts that were done for the MobiGlas, as well as listening to different references, as well as music, as we wanted to create a soundscape whenever bring the MobiGlas up, so that we could immerse the player in a more soothing stage. What came out of the meeting is that we wanted to give the player not just the feeling of using sci-fi tool, like a sci-fi futuristic tool, but we also wanted to give the player the feeling of using an actual electronic device. So, visually we would have a screen flickering or different images distorting as well every now and then. So in order to address that, we used Coil pickup microphones. And what's really particular about those microphones is that they do not transduce sound waves into an electric signals, but instead we're able to capture those electromagnetic fields created by electric devices. So you could actually hear a hard disk of a computer working, or you can basically hear like your mobile phone working under the hood and things like that. And that really helped us to bring that extra layers of reality when adding them to more synthy tones. One of those challenges was basically trying to immerse the player into a different state. So usually when you are in a specific area, you would hear ambiances, you would hear like all different things happening around you. But again, we also wanted to create something like another state, like a soothing moment whenever using the MobiGlas. So creating a soundscape, like an overall ambiances for that, it was something that I've been trying to do and redo a few more and more times, just to basically try to make it more interesting and relaxing.
So another challenge is that because we are a first-person game, we don't necessarily see much of the character in frame, except if you're, for instance, to look down at your feet. I mean, at the same time, we need to be able to make it apparent that your character is aware of the UI. So how do we do that? And that's one of the reasons why we've always opted to have the arm visible on screen, is because that's the visual connection between the UI and the character. So the interesting thing about the star map and where we want to take it in the future is that the star map will actually be the same display tech being used for the radar. And you can sort of think the star map as sort of like a Google Maps of the star citizen universe. It's basically, we eventually want to make it whereby you can zoom in far enough and it basically turns into a radar in a ship, or your surroundings, like who's around me if I'm in first person. We've initially showed off the star map at Gamescom last year, which was basically to be able to quantum travel to a location. But since then, we've actually iterated on it heavily. We've done a sprint for the star map, which involved VFX, gameplay engineering, audio, and so forth to really drive this UI to the next level. So we have all kinds of new effects in the star map. We've iterated on the user experience of the star map and just made it much more visually impressive than it was, even just a few weeks prior.
The star map is the first implementation of the world display system. The world display system basically allows us to preview different kinds of data from different kind of sources. So these different kind of sources could be radar, navigational data, could be ships, people on your radar, could be celestial objects, could be all kinds of data. And the thing about the world display system is that we can preview it and zoom in on it, zoom out of it, rotate around it, so display it so that we have like a whole view of whatever we want to show. The star map is a very good implementation of that because it shows planets, stars, system, galaxy. You can zoom in to stations, stuff like that. Later on, we'll be able to show area, information, minimaps, maybe even implement the radar into the same star map. So if you zoom in, you'll see radar data like blips of different vehicles, different ships on your radar. And if you zoom out, you'll be able to see the navigational data of celestial objects, of, for example, a star, or your planets, moons, and that's the basic of the world display system. For the star map, I have been mainly involved in working on the polish of the star map. That involves getting some good navigation inside your star map. So if you zoom in, zoom out, if you rotate your stuff so that it feels right. Mouse input feels very smooth and feels like the user experience is right for your star map. I've also been working on the animations, like little animations when the star map pops in, like everything zooms in, like it feels kind of animated. It gives a little bit of an extra edge on the star map and the visuals. So the visuals I've been working on as well is like adding some kind of backdrop, lines, and different kind of stuff to make the star map look better. The biggest code challenge for getting the star map to work is kind of translating the positional data of the world. So your planets are somewhere in this large universe, and these have to be kind of translated into this very small screen. It's a very basic game kind of problem, but it's kind of hard to get it right, I guess, because you have to work with transforms, as the rotation, the translation, and the scaling of your objects. You have to make these big objects and kind of compress them into this small screen. You have to structure your code very well in order to get like the result you want, that like these big objects are these small things on your display.
So we've also done a revamp of the Mission Manager app, which we've actually now named the Contracts Manager. And the Contracts Manager is the MobiGlas app, which manages all missions between mission givers and the PU, as well as eventually player-created missions. The app is now split amongst a number of different screen flows. The first one being the available contract screen, which is where you'll be able to view all available contract opportunities within your particular area, view the details of each contract, such as the reward and who it was posted by, as well as explicitly accept those contracts as well. We have a pending screen also, which displays the particular contracts which have been sent to you directly via the game or in conversation, say for instance, when you're in a meeting with a mission giver like Miles Eckhart. Players can then accept or reject these contracts. You then also have a particular screen which displays the contracts which you've accepted. And from here, you'll be able to view all the dynamically generated list of objectives for each particular contract, as well as track or abandon those contracts. A contract history screen will allow players also to review the ones which you've previously completed or failed. Later down the line, we want to introduce another screen in the app which will allow players the ability to actually create their own contracts and post it on the available contracts board. Another application which we will be introducing is the Inventory Manager, which will allow players the ability to view all items that their character has in possession across the Star Citizen universe. From small antique coins all the way up to something more significant like, say, a large capital ship. To make it easier to navigate amongst potentially thousands of items, players can specify a filter, and also items can be sorted and searched amongst. Another purpose of this app will be to allow the ability for players to transfer items from one cargo box to another, or from ship to ship, as long as both the origin and destination are in the same relative location. This app, along with many others, like the Contracts Manager and the Star Map, will play crucial roles in aiding the various professions like mining, trading, transport, and so forth. So as you can see, we have a lot in development for the upcoming release, a lot of new apps that we're doing on top of the general overhaul of the MobiGlas. So what you'll see is basically a very initial feature set in all of these different apps, and we'll be continuing to expand on this going forward, introducing more robust features and more robust functionality for additional gameplay mechanics that will eventually be introduced. I'm kind of excited to get this into the players' hands and seeing what they think of it.